to another video. Last week we talked about Superstore and everything up to the finale. We had a previous video as well discussing our reaction to the season in general and what we expect uh, going into the finale. And now the finale has happened, so we're going to discuss the finale as well as a whole, how we felt about it, and we had a lot of feelings. I know I did. And where were we satisfied with like where the characters ended up? So Kuku, how did you feel about the finale? Were the characters, the storyline, did it make you laugh? Did it make you cry?
Yeah, I mean, definitely both. Which, is generally the mark of a good. I always say anything, if it's well done, it will make me both laugh and cry. And it did manage to do both. So I think overall, my sentiment was that it was well done for a finale. I was, I surprised myself a little bit because I honestly was more emotional than I thought it would be. I was like, even though going into it, I procrastinated watching it for as long. Like, I was just like, I'm not ready for this to be over. I don't want to. I don't want to watch the end. So I kept putting it off, and then I was like, okay, you have to watch it. And then I was watching it, and like I was emotional before I even started because I was like, it's over. Um, so I probably would have been emotional no matter what happened, but it was definitely like it's funny because the moments that hit me in the feels were not the ones I would have expected to hit me in the feels.
Like
Which
which ones?
so for me it was the moments that made me cry were it was something that had to do with Mateo. I'm trying to remember which moment specifically it was.
Was it when Glenn told him he can come work for him? Because
I
that
think
made me really
so.
emotional.
Obviously they were like building up his storyline like throughout. You just felt bad for him. But yeah, I think it was the moment where he told Mateo to come work for him. And then, so there was the Mateo moment, and then I was like, oh my gosh. And then there was the Sandra moment where she gets, that whole thing between her and Dina, where Dina's trying to figure out who to keep, and then Sandra comes in and she's like, just pick these 5 people, which I don't know. Apparently, it was that easy for her to decide those 5 people. I don't know why. Seems like,
It's
I mean, like
Sandra, you know.
I guess. I mean, that was like the group. They were the group that worked together all the time in the back. So I guess those were the people she picked. But anyway, when she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be your assistant manager," that was my second crying moment because I was just so happy for her and so proud of her and just like it was the perfect moment for her. Um, so those were the two big ones, I think. And then obviously just the end, the entire ending montage, of course, made me cry. So I think those are the top three hit me in the feels moments. What about you?
Oh, there were many. I too did not want it to end. And, because we talked uh, in the other videos about how the quality hasn't been so great, but I feel like this was one of the best series finales I've seen in quite some time. Um, it balanced like the right amount of humor, like you said, hit you in the feelings. I think for me, especially I love that we found out why Dina and Glenn, or why she always had like such a contentious relationship with Glenn, because because he brings up the birds. He's like, I'm not a bird lover, but then at the end,
Yeah.
they sort of have like that one moment where he's sort of handing over the store to her and telling her to take care of the store, and it was just really their relationship came full circle, and I think that's what was so emotional about that specific moment. And I also agree about the Sandra and Dina moment because they've Dina has always kind of gone on Sandra's back for whatever reason, sort of been the butt of a joke in a lot of instances. But then here, when Dina's facing like a moment of not knowing what to do and not being able to come to a decision, Sandra's just like, I got this, and Sandra has like those moments where she just comes in strong, and I like that. And then she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Is that okay? So I love that. And I think and especially for me, the moment between Jonah and Amy, her big speech, of course, but before that, when Jonah's like, you know, having a moment for himself and saying, you can't just come back and think that I'm going to be something you can pick up whenever you want to. And I think that really was a great moment for him because he's probably felt like strung along for so long, and especially with the way that Amy left. So I'm glad that he got to actually say his piece, and that made me emotional. And then Amy, of course, like saying, you know, that he sort of like brings her happiness. Life was just an everyday ordeal for her, and it's sort of calling back to the pilot about how her life is now not necessarily worth living, but all the milestones that have happened in her life since he came into it have been pretty big, and they were because of him, because his support, his love, and whatnot. So I think that was really, really nice for them as a ship. And of course, like the ending with Garrett not being or being hesitant to be emotional over the fact that the store was leaving, and then finally giving the speech is like, you know what, this place did mean a lot to me. And his whole speech over the montage, like I was in a ball of tears.
Oh my god. I literally
I was
rewatched
like
that montage.
sobbing.
I don't know how many times I rewatched that montage, but I just kept rewinding it over and over because I was like, this is a lot to take in like a few minutes. And at first I was just focusing on all of the imagery, right? Because they're showing us what happened to all the characters.
Mhm.
So I couldn't even focus on what he was saying. And I kept having to rewind it because I kept missing what he was talking about because I kept freaking out over what's happening. And so I kept having to rewind it at least 10 times to actually hear his speech properly and let it sink in. But yeah, it was definitely really good. It was like the perfect ending montage, and also, like you said, having him be the one to narrate it was also a perfect choice, um, considering he's usually the not emotional one. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm getting emotional again talking about it now. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
thought
I
about
definitely,
rewatching it before we recorded, but I didn't have any time. But I do want to rewatch it.
I mean, I don't know that I want to rewatch it, but I'm gonna need some time now. But but yeah, I liked that. I felt like every character got their happy ending. I felt like every character got what they deserved at the end. They didn't leave any like there wasn't anyone that left you with anything wanting anything more, any disappointment or whatever. Like and I like that they took the time to do that with every single character. And it wasn't just like all the Amy Jonas show or whatever. Like they actually gave each character their due in the end. And it was just so sweet that in the end, like, you know, they in the show they were always talking about, oh, we're family. And you know, sometimes people just say that, but it was nice that in the end they showed that they actually really did hang out even after they all went their separate ways. They all stayed friends and stayed in touch. Even though I was like, some of these people I don't know that you need to be staying in touch with, but it was still sweet because it's brought home that message of like, oh, they were a family, and you know, family is family, even the ones that are kooky and messed up, even the ones that apparently try to sue you stay members of the family. So whatever, I guess it's all inclusive. But yeah, I was like, that was just really sweet to have to show them in the end all hanging out together and staying friends. And um, so so that's like my positives. I kind of disagree in terms of what you said. The things that I would have, I think, liked a little more of, or would have preferred be done a little bit differently is, so that ending montage was great, and we did get to see everything happen. Oh, wait, sorry. No, we got to see where everybody ends up, right? Personally, I would have preferred to actually see how they ended up there as opposed to just like a montage that's like, this is what happened. Um, which is, you know, I have my feeling like montages sometimes are really great, and then other times I feel like montages are a bit of a cop out, and it's like a way too easy way of just being like, And then this happened, the end, which is fine. It's better than it not happening at all. And like I said, it was done really well. But going back to like sort of things I said in previous videos, a lot of the things that they threw in the montage were things that I personally wanted them to show happening either throughout the season, or at least like in the finale, we could have actually seen the process of some of that stuff as opposed to just throwing it in the end. And also, I said my top 3 moments, were Mateo, Sandra, and then the final montage. If you'll notice, what's missing from that is the Amy Jonah moment.
Interesting.
So I actually disagree that I liked that Amy Jonah, and like, I'm happy that they ended up together because I'm not, that's ultimately what I wanted. So I was like, whatever. I was not super invested in their ending though, because I didn't think that the speech was enough. I thought there should have been more, because yes, they let Jonah say his piece for a freaking second, and then like basically it ended the same way their entire relationship has been throughout the show. And I talked about this again before, and it annoyed me. And I said specifically before that when Amy comes back, she has to do something that is a grand gesture or something that will make up for what she did, because what she did was freaking terrible. And it's not as simple as just being like, sorry, I messed up, can we get back together? And Jonah's like, okay, and then it's all hunky-dory. And then we just see and then it just like they did 2 fast forwards, because they have her come back and they have it be all awkward, but at the same time Jonah is like way more magically okay with the whole thing than he should be, just like he's magically been okay with the whole scenario the entire season, other than one tiny little breakdown. And so they have like that interaction, and then it's like it jumps in time like a month, I think it was, which that in and of itself like irked me a little bit. I don't like time jumps, and I don't like time jumps in finales particularly, because again, fast forwarding through time to me is just a too easy way of doing things that I would rather have be done in the moment. So we get that time jump, and then they interact again, and then now Amy's like, oh well, now I know what I want. And and Jonah comes in, and of course, like, it was the most typical thing. She goes to him, she says, I know what I want now, and then he says, you can't do that to my feelings, and says no, rejects her, and then what's it called? They come back again, have another conversation about it where they're both like, let's put it aside, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, okay, everything is great now. And Jonah's like, you know what, screw it. And then they kiss, and then everything is okay. And it's like, I don't think, like, it was very sweet. The speech was sweet. I like that she brought up the fact that, like, the only reason he stayed at the store was obviously for her, because he had no reason to be there for so long. Which is sort of fine, but also sort of like, really, like, you stayed 6 years for a woman who rejected you anyways. And then like I said, all of that is okay if I felt like it's built up to something that was worth it in the end to me, I guess. Like, I just felt like her giving one little 1-minute speech wasn't enough. And like, if I was in Jonah's place, I would have been way more messed up than that, first of all. And second of all, that speech, like, maybe he would have come around eventually or whatever, but it's just like, really, like, out of everything Jonah has, maybe I'm just biased and love Jonah too much, I don't know, but it's like, out of everything that he's done, he stuck around in a place he shouldn't have been for 6 years. He devoted his entire life to her. He changed her life. He did all of these things. And first of all, you couldn't even freaking just like get it together enough to realize that you want him until after you leave, and then after you're forced to come back, not even of your own will because of the situation that happens, and then you're just like, oh well, now I know what I want, and I think I could just go up to you and be like, let me just say this one little thing,
Kuku,
and
I'm
if you
gonna
want to.
interrupt you because this is turning into Jonah and Amy bashing. I don't like it.
It's I know because I love Amy and Jonah, and that's why I was frustrated by it. And maybe it's because I like Jonah a little bit more. But I just felt like it should have been handled like they could have made it a little bit more cute, cheesy, and spent a little bit more time on making that payoff in the end worth it, instead of, like I said, fast forwarding to, oh, let me show you a picture of our honeymoon so that you just know everything worked out.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I agree that there could have been better lead up, so on and so forth. But I guess I forgive it a little bit because I know they didn't have too much time. This season was already short because of the pandemic, and
well, they wasted most of the season on stupid
they
episodes.
they did. I'm not going to disagree with you there, but also I think the cancellation came like halfway through. So considering that, I think that they wrapped it up as well as they could. But I do agree that if they had spent more time kind of digging into like Jonah's feelings over the last several episodes more, then it would have been better that way. And but I will say in defense of Amy that like I not to, because she admits what she did was wrong, but I also understand where it was that she was coming from because like Jonah already had a life before coming to this store, right? And he realized what he wanted fairly quickly. With her, she sort of had to like realize it over time, but also because she's been stuck in like the same bubble for a long time. Even when she was with Jonah, she was still at the same store. She was generally doing the same thing. So leaving that and being able to do something else, it's sort of like when you go on a trip and you've never left your hometown and you go on a trip and you suddenly like see things a little bit differently because you're seeing it from a different perspective. And that's what had to happen with her for her to see like the error of her ways. And yes, it could have happened differently, but like I know that the plan was for her always to come back at the end. And I remember reading interviews that she just didn't think it would happen so soon. Because for me, even like the breakup with Hannah was so like abrupt in that I wanted more of a reason as to like why they broke up instead of just that they broke up. Because during that month, like what were the conversations being had that led you to break up? Like was it Jonah seeing Amy again, making him realize that this wasn't really going to work out, or
Yeah,
that could have used a little bit more explanation. But I do think in
yeah.
general they did enough for the ship, considering like the shortened time. But I do agree about like the build up could have been a lot better in earlier episodes with regards to Jonah's feelings specifically.
Yeah, I I think it was just that like everything you just said, like it made me feel like the entire relationship was always being told from Amy's perspective, not Jonah's. And that just kind of irks me because I would have liked to see more of Jonah's perspective of things. Like, which is why, like, because they showed us Amy's perspective so much, you do understand where she's coming from because of, like everything you said. Like, we know what her emotional state was. We know why she did what she did and why she acts the way that she does. And all of that makes total sense. We get that. The problem is we don't know Jonah's side of any of it because they don't show it. Like you said, even his breakup, we never see. It happens off screen. We have no idea how Amy's return actually affected him in any way. They never tell us or show us that. Um, so it's like we really don't see Jonah's side of all of this, and because of that, it's like I have a hard time wrapping my head around what he feels in all of these things, and what his end of it is, and whether, and without having that side shown just as much, like it makes it harder for me to feel happy for his side. It's like I'm glad for how it ended up, and I'm glad for Amy because her life, you know, ended up just the way that she wanted to. It worked out perfectly for her. I don't know if it worked out perfectly for Jonah because I don't feel like I saw Jonah's side of it emotionally. So, you know, even in the end, like the fact that he was running for city council, it's like, great. I've been arguing all season that I would have liked to actually see that something like that happen. Like, we don't even get to see his transition into becoming, you know, what he should have been all along, which is someone who's like an activist for change. And I would have liked to see how that happened, why that happened, what triggered that, you know, like why was this something that didn't happen until after the store closed and after Amy comes back, and again it makes it seem like it was all just in the end about getting together with Amy, and everything in his life, everything else is like secondary. So it's like the focus is completely on Amy all the time. And I just would have liked a little bit more of the focus in the relationship to sometimes be on Jonah and to sometimes allow him to be the one who takes center stage and not just her all the time. That's pretty much it overall. But again, that could just be me being biased because I love Jonah's character so much. You know.
Understandable. But to leave things off with our final Superstore video, since the series is now over, what do you feel like was your biggest takeaway with regards to the show? Like what kind of joy did it bring you in terms of or by comparison to other sitcoms of this era?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think time will tell in terms of how much it withstands the test of time. But overall, you know, the last season and a half notwithstanding, I think, you know, I think my looking back, I will have forgotten the last season and a half happened. And my focus will be on the seasons that I did enjoy, which I think were the actual center of the show. And I think it'll go down in history of the show that was a bit of an underrated underdog of a show, but was just really well done. It was funny, it was smart. Um, it was a show that was about just normal people, like, and it's weirdly, you know, I mean, we see all kinds of comedies on TV, but I feel like this was really a comedy that just felt very grounded. It felt very in tune with just like the everyday lives of people, and was really, I think, a good ode and homage to that, especially obviously in a world where um, the world of like Hollywood and TV can come off very elitist a lot of the times. And I think this was a show that was good at not becoming that in any way. And, you know, you could say Jonah was like the representative character of that type of a person. But one of the good things about the show was that they showed every type of a person. And so there was a good diversity of characters and just good diversity as well, which it was diverse in a way that was subtle, which was nice. It wasn't like a overt pandering in your face. Oh, look at all these characters that we picked that represent different things, and let's make them like these token characters. Like
Yeah,
they
they
legit
weren't self-congratulatory about their diversity. Like, oh, look at us.
exactly. And because of that, I never even thought about the diversity element for the most part because they don't bring it up, which is nice because it shows that this is just how it is. Like this is what America looks like. It's diverse. Um, so that it was just they hit so many things so well. Like they talked about everyday issues and they also talked about really important things, but they always did it in ways that were true to real conversations with people, or like it was tasteful. It was just done really well on so many levels. And I don't know on a personal level what's going to be where like I said, time will kind of tell where it lands in my repertoire of favorites, but no one can doubt that at least on a critical level, it was a really good show.
That it was indeed. And I think for me, like you said, with regards to the diversity aspect and them having it on the show and weaving in storylines that, because, you know, this show has been on since the late stage Obama era. It lived through the Trump era and into the Biden era. So it's like that is a lot in and of itself because a lot has happened in that time. And I feel like
Yeah.
it really touched upon all of these different issues really well by, like you said, weaving it into regular conversations that regular people would be having all the time, like their break room conversations, their break room debates, and making it, doing it in a way that didn't feel like it was hitting you over the head with a subject. Like, like some episodes will be like, this is a very special episode where we're going to talk about gun control. I'm like, I don't, just feels
Yeah.
random and not true to the show. Whereas these situations and these topics were true to the show because they were part of the fabric of the show itself from the very beginning. And I like that they did that. And I like that they gave us all sorts of different characters from all sorts of different backgrounds. And you're right, like this is what America looks like because so many people, I guess, when thinking about the stereotypes of what Midwest America looks like, they only think maybe like, oh, white towns and things like that. But that's not true. There's so many people of color who live in those areas too. And I like that this show at this store had all of those people there because it really felt more realistic. And I think that like when I started watching it, I was really surprised that it wasn't more popular than it was because, it's a workplace comedy and it was really funny and it touched on so many different issues in a really great way. So it always shocked me that people didn't, I guess, stand the show as much as they do other workplace comedies, like they do Parks and Rec or The Office and things like that. So that was always disappointing. But I do think that its status as an underdog show allowed it to cover these topics and do these storylines in a way that went under the radar. They could just get away with it, and it was fine. So I like
Yeah.
that. And I think,
Yeah.
for me, in terms of longevity, I will say that like Amy and Jonah have made my list of like top ships in general.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Because for me, they like, for the most part, it touched on like a lot of the stuff that I like to see in developing relationships on screen, without necessarily being all about that relationship 24/7, especially in like a workplace comedy where they covered other characters and that was nice.
Yeah.
And it was just, the type of comedy I think in the long run, maybe at some point I will go back and like rewatch from the very beginning because it did have like great moments that are just genuine and heartwarming and funny. And that's like, I'll probably even, I don't know, like the last season and a half in the future. Who knows? But at least like the first four seasons, so solid on like a fan
Yeah.
level, on a critical level. And I think that's like the legacy of the show that it lived through a certain time period and it did all those topics just fantastically well.
Yeah. And I think it was really good at utilizing its characters, all of its characters well. I think a lot of shows do a good job of balancing when you have a large cast. And it usually ends up becoming about one or two people, and then everybody else falls by the wayside, and you're like, what happened to all those other side characters?
Yeah.
But I really liked that this show used all of its side characters constantly, and it also respected its side characters. And that's, like the finale was a very big testament of that it wasn't a show that, you know, disrespected any of its characters. Even the smallest and most minute character, even the ones that, only had a couple lines here and there, like everybody was their role that they played in the store and who they were as a person was always respected regardless. And that I think is also a really important message of the show, especially with it being such a diverse show that shows such a diverse array of people with different opinions and different backgrounds and different beliefs and all this stuff. And they show every range of belief that you could possibly have. But nobody, regardless of their beliefs and regardless of their behavior, whatever, like nobody is ever disrespected. And that I think is a really good takeaway that we can learn from in this country, especially with the volatile nature of the way things are right now, where everybody is fighting and against each other, and it's just it seems like no one can get along sometimes. And I think this show is a really good testament of this group of people who were able to get along regardless of all of that stuff, and were able to still form a family and to still have that respect for each other be maintained regardless of all of that stuff. And I think again the finale did a really good job of making sure to bring that message home by showing us every character have their ending that they deserve, and every character is really good. They really took time to make sure those side characters were just as respected as well. So I think that's a good message that can be an ultimate takeaway from Superstore for everybody.
It really is, and that's a wrap on Superstore, everyone. I mean, it's been a good run. Go watch the show again, or from the beginning if you have not seen it. And be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on the video. And we will be back next time to talk about more television. In the meantime, go watch some TV. Bye.
All right. Bye.